the west. Everybody know our name. And if your daddy gone, but your mama's home, we can bring it, we ain't got no shame. Up, down, turn it around, girl. I can be the one to blame. You first, me first, give it a go. When you're with it, then it's all the same.
At the time of scripting this video, the WWE, specifically NXT, are in the midst of their working relationship with TNA. We've got stars from both brands appearing on each other's weekly television shows and pay-per-views. This particular partnership would have been unthinkable even 5 years ago. However, under the WWE's new stewardship, it seems that the company's turned a corner in regards to working with promotions outside of their own sphere, not only in regards to their ongoing association with TNA, but just in 2024 alone, the likes of Shayna Baszler, Io Sky and AJ Styles have all appeared for companies outside of their principal employer. This isn't the first time WWE have partnered up with other prominent promotions. For example, their affiliation with the Japanese-based SWS in 1991, AAA of Mexico, most notably throughout the 1997 Royal Rumble, ECW also in 1997 to help promote the Philadelphia company's first pay-per-view Barely Legal, as well as the likes of ICW, Progress and Evolve in more recent years. In 2016, the idea of looking to outside talent was revisited, but instead of looking to a single promotion, this time it would be a number of organizations that would contribute to a concept put forward by Triple H. Throughout the 90s, in America at least, professional wrestling was awash with giants, larger than life specimens standing over 6 foot tall and well over 200 pounds. And this idea of a statuesque super athlete became the go-to for what wrestling fans expected a pro wrestler to look like. However, a revolution was starting to gain traction regarding smaller, more agile wrestlers who could do much more than your standard kick-punch brawling. These cruiserweight stars produced daredevil dives and astounding acrobatics that excited crowds, and in many cases, these were the styles of matches that stole the show, ahead of the big stars in the main events. Fast forward to the 2010s and the roles had been completely reversed. So-called smaller athletes were now some of the biggest names in the industry, and the muscle-bound giants were now put on the back burner. Seeing this, the WWE and Triple H specifically decided to bring back the spirit of the Cruiserweight Revolution with the inaugural Cruiserweight Classic, a 32-man tournament which would bring together not only WWE contracted performers, but a number of wrestlers from outside their jurisdiction. So in today's video, we're going to take a look back at the Cruiserweight Classic tournament and see just how well this experiment worked, and we'll also look at the impact it made on the WWE going forward. 3 NXT stars were announced to compete in this tournament: Rich Swann, Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, with several other unsigned performers winning qualifying matches on various independent shows in the lead up to the tournament. Zack Sabre Jr. and Jack Gallagher both qualified after winning matches against Flash Morgan Webster and Pete Dunne respectively at Progress Chapter 29. Noam Dar advanced at Rev Pro Live at the Cockpit. TJ Perkins and Drew Gulak won their matches at Evolve 61. Lindsay Dorado advanced at an American Combat Wrestling event. And Tony Nese qualified after winning a 5-man elimination match at Evolve 63. The rest of the participants were announced in the lead up to the tournament, with 2 of the biggest names being Tajiri, a former WWE veteran, and his fellow countryman Kota Ibushi, who had recently departed from New Japan Pro Wrestling, was seen by many as one of, if not the, best wrestler on the planet. With the sheer level of recognizable talent, as well as the excitement of uncovering some hidden gems from all across the globe, the anticipation levels for this tournament were reaching a fever pitch. Throughout pro wrestling in America, and in WWE specifically, tournaments never really proved to be a major draw, with the exception being the Deadly Game tournament at Survivor Series 98. However, the reason that tournament was fondly remembered is primarily due to the show-long storyline as opposed to the quality of the matches. So you can see why the WWE went all out to get some of the world's best cruiserweights to present this tournament as a big deal and add an air of legitimacy to it. In a video uploaded to their YouTube channel on the 24th of June 2016, all 32 competitors got revealed, along with the announced team for the tournament, that being Mauro Ranallo and Daniel Bryan. Each participant was given a few seconds to come to the ring whilst the commentary team filled the viewers in on each of their backgrounds, knowing that the majority of the tournament would be made up of non-WWE talent. As an aside, Mustafa Ali was not originally scheduled to be in the tournament. His spot was initially going to be taken by Zombie, a Brazilian wrestler, but issues with his visa prevented him from being involved. All in all, 18 countries would be represented, and the wrestlers would compete in a single knockout tournament until only one man was left standing. Following the July 6th episode of NXT, the tournament brackets were revealed for the first round of matches, with the majority of the attention focused on the likes of Ibushi and Zack Sabre Jr. as to who they would be facing off against in their debut inside a WWE ring. On the 13th of July 2016, the first episode of the CWC was aired on the WWE Network, with a new episode airing weekly right up until the live finale on September 14th. The first match of the tournament saw Grand Metal League of Mexico take on Chile's Alejandro Saiz. Even from this opening bout, fans got to see that this whole event would be presented in a completely different way in comparison to the WWE's usual programming. Before each match, the competitors were asked to shake hands, and at the conclusion of the contest, the winner would be announced in a style similar to MMA or boxing. The tournament would emanate from Full Sail University, the same venue which was used for NXT's weekly television tape, which I can't help but think was a deliberate choice. Yes, it made sense to film there as they already had access to the building and it was convenient and cost effective, but I also think it was to draw comparisons to what NXT in 2016 was all about, presenting international stars and top independent talent to a small rabid audience who knew who these guys were and would make them seem like a big deal to fans who may not have been as familiar with them. These opening round matches helped to showcase different styles of cruiserweight wrestling, such as brawling, striking, and technical wrestling, which did show that there was much more to these guys than the ability to fly around the ring, even though this style was prevalent amongst the participants. It was during the first round that we also began to get some storyline developments in regards to certain competitors. For example, the two best friends and tag team partners, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, having their friendship tested to the limit as they squared off. Gargano would get the win in what turned out to be a very emotional match, but this result would plant the seed for a years-long rivalry in NXT, which is arguably the Black and Gold brand's greatest ever. TJ Perkins would have an 18-year journey to make it to the big time brought to the forefront. Brian Kendrick is one of the most tenured veterans in the competition, could have his last hurrah, or it could be a rebirth for the 37-year-old. As much as the tournament itself was the story, these extra elements added a sprinkle of drama and intrigue on top of the spectacle of the action inside the ropes, catering to all types of wrestling fandom. At the end of the round, 32 would become 16 as half of the competitors would get eliminated. All of these opening round matches fell into the good to great category, but if I were to recommend a few of them specifically, definitely the Gargano and Ciampa match for the aforementioned drama and emotion, Ibushi versus Sean Maluda just for the intrigue of seeing one of the world's best inside a WWE ring for the first time, as well as Lince Dorado versus Mustafa Ali for a masterclass in traditional cruiserweight acrobatics. Also, Rich Swann, he's great in the ring and his entrance music alone makes his CWC and NXT matches worth watching. The second round began airing on August 10th, with Grand Metal League advancing after defeating Tajiri, but it was the main event of this episode which would bring the CWC its biggest amount of attention so far. The bout between Kota Ibushi and Cedric Alexander not only proved to be the match of the round, but in the eyes of many, and in my personal opinion, this was the match of the whole tournament. Both men unleashed their entire arsenal in a 15-minute classic which went right down to the wire. Ibushi was able to squeak out the victory inside the last 10 seconds following the Golden Star Powerbomb. The Full Sail crowd showed their appreciation for both men, with Cedric in particular receiving a lot of love from the fans. So much so, they began chanting "Please sign Cedric," which prompted Triple H to appear and seemingly suggest that he would do just that. The match would go on to receive a 4.5 star rating from Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, but on the Wrestling Bio star scale, which actually doesn't exist, this one gets 1,000,000 stars. Make sure you check it out. Elsewhere throughout the second round, there was a hard-hitting technical affair between Tozawa and Super Creep Jack Gallagher. Noam Dar would get the better of Ho Hu Lun, and Brian Kendrick would continue his story by eliminating the younger, more powerful Tony Nese. At the conclusion of the second round of matches, the quarterfinals set up some extremely interesting matchups, as Akira Tozawa would take on Grand Metalik, Zack Sabre Jr. would square off with Noam Dar in an all-UK affair, Rich Swann and TJ Perkins would go one-on-one, and the pick of the matches would certainly be the veteran Brian Kendrick having arguably the toughest draw. If he wanted to keep his Cinderella story alive, he would have to make it through Kota Ibushi. It was during the airing of the second round matches that the CWC trophy was shown off for the very first time. It was officially unveiled during NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2 when Triple H, along with the cast of Orange County Choppers who actually made the trophy, revealed that the winner would receive it on September 14th during the live finale of the Cruiserweight Classic. The quarterfinals would be the final set of taped episodes of the CWC, as the semis and the final would be taking place live on the WWE Network, being split over 2 episodes airing on the 31st of August and the 7th of September. Each would have 2 quarterfinal matches per episode. First up would be the hard-hitting style of Akira Tozawa versus the high-flying ability of Grand Metalik. In the end, it would be the Masked Man who would come out on top following nearly 16 minutes of non-stop action. Metalik was able to withstand Tozawa's signature German suplex finisher, which had put away both of Tozawa's previous opponents, and Metalik was able to connect with his own Metalik driver to advance to the semi-finals. It was then the turn of Brian Kendrick, as he and Kota Ibushi would create one of the biggest talking points of not just the tournament, but of the entire wrestling world in 2016. During their bout, which was fantastic by the way, as Kendrick was forced to use his veteran tactics against the continuous onslaught of his opponent, Kendrick hooked Ibushi in an Argentine backbreaker, seemingly setting him up for a torture rack or some sort of spin-out slam. But Kendrick instead dropped Ibushi right on his head with a burning hammer, a move that had been outlawed in WWE for being too dangerous. The crowd reacted strongly to the move, as did the commentary team, even though Ibushi kicked out at 2. Kendrick had targeted the neck for the entirety of the match, and the fact that this move wasn't enough to put Ibushi away was a sign of things to come. Kendrick's storybook run would come to an end at the hand of Ibushi's Golden Star Powerbomb. The following week's quarterfinal matches kicked off with 2 technicians, as Zack Sabre Jr. and Noam Dar went one-on-one. Both men displayed their arsenal of grapples and submissions, but it would be the Englishman who would prevail using a modified version of the Rings of Saturn to advance in the tournament. The quarterfinal stage concluded with TJ Perkins taking on Rich Swann. It would be a night of submission victories, as TJP would make Swann tap out to his patented knee bar submission, and with that we had our final 4. The final episode of the CWC would see the winner get crowned. 4 would become 1, as the semi-finals and final would be contested on the same night. It would be Mexico against England, as Grand Metalik would take on Zack Sabre Jr. in the first semi-final, and Japan's Kota Ibushi would square off against TJ Perkins, representing the Philippines, in the other semi-final. We were going to find out very soon who would be crowned the winner of the Cruiserweight Classic. After 10 weeks of programming, the tournament concluded with the final 3 matches in front of a packed house at Full Sail. Along with the final CWC contests, there would be a tag team match featuring DIY, the team of Gargano and Ciampa, taking on Cedric Alexander and Noam Dar. DIY were able to put their differences from the tournament aside to pick up the victory, but preceding this tag team match, we would find out who would be competing in the final match of the CWC, as both semi-finals would take place. First off, the high-flying luchador Grand Metalik squared off with the technical wizard Zack Sabre Jr. Metalik came out of the blocks quickly with high-impact aerial offense, but Zack was able to ground his opponent, showcasing both of their varied styles of pro wrestling. After a tremendous back and forth encounter, it would be Grand Metalik who would advance to the finals, as he was able to connect with his Metalik driver for the pin and the win. This result was seen by many as a huge upset, as many fans would have thought that the Englishman would have been one of the favourites to win the whole tournament, but we'll come back to this later on. Speaking of favourites, the second semi-final match saw the man who many assumed would be the one to win it all, Kota Ibushi, taking on the still popular but significantly more unfancied TJ Perkins. In stark contrast to the first semi-final, both men started off very tentatively, not wanting to be the first one to make a mistake. Both men displayed their expertise in grappling, striking and attacking from the air, as well as TJ Perkins kicking out of Ibushi's signature Golden Star Powerbomb, the first man to do so in the entirety of the tournament. Perkins even countered Ibushi's second attempt at his finisher by applying his patented knee bar submission before shifting into an STF to make the tournament favourite submit. Both Kota Ibushi and Zack Sabre Jr, two of the biggest names in the tournament, were eliminated at the semi-final stage. So why was this the case? It was revealed that both men had refused to sign contracts with the company, and so the decision was made to have neither man win the tournament. PW Torch had previously reported that Ibushi had actually signed a deal with WWE, but they were forced to retract their statement following the conclusion of the tournament. Zack Sabre Jr. instead signed with New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he would debut in February the following year. So, pretty surprisingly, the tournament final would feature two men who were pegged by many as merely being there to make up the numbers, as Grand Metalik would take on TJ Perkins to crown the inaugural Cruiserweight Classic winner. Earlier in the broadcast, it was announced that the Cruiserweight division would be continuing on as being the exclusive property of Monday Night Raw. No one really knew what that meant in terms of presentation or how they would be integrated into the show, but what we did know is that these athletes would now be appearing on the WWE's flagship weekly television show. Both finalists made their way down to the ring to kick off the conclusion of the tournament, but before the bell rang, Triple H made his way down to the ring to make an announcement. He said that everyone was here to make history, as the winner would not only walk away with the Cruiserweight Classic trophy, but would also be walking away with the brand new WWE Cruiserweight Championship belt, creating a new lineage which would be separate from the title's previous incarnation. The reveal of the new belt was a shock, and it showed that maybe the company was indeed going to shine a spotlight on this division. Despite both men wrestling for 15 minutes apiece earlier in the night, the final match clocked in at just under 20 minutes, with both competitors showcasing every aspect of their respective repertoires, going from a mat-based technical opening before quickening up the pace and showing off their high-flying and striking abilities. In the end, it was TJ Perkins countering a top rope version of the Metalik driver by securing his signature knee bar for the submission victory. After 10 weeks and 31 total matches, we finally had a winner who would now head to Monday Night Raw to head up this new division as its champion. The tournament was extremely well received by those who watched it, and there was an air of optimism going into the following week's episode of Monday Night Raw. Throughout the show, vignettes were shown hyping the arrival of the Cruiserweights. Then General Manager Mick Foley would come out to cut a promo about the division, the first line of which mentioned the old cliche of "it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog," which did immediately set off alarm bells. I know it's what Mick was told to say, so it's not his fault, but this one line portrayed these guys as lesser than. By placing these smaller athletes in their own division, it essentially reinforced that old pro wrestling adage that you have to look a certain way to be taken seriously. It existed in WCW in the 90s with how their cruiserweights were portrayed, and WWE were doing the exact same thing here. Cruiserweight segments would eventually go on to be presented with their own aesthetic, with separate graphics and different coloured ropes and ring aprons, emphasising that these segments weren't part of the regular Monday Night Raw programme. Now, yes, you can say that this was an attempt to help the division stand out, but really, I don't know. Especially considering that back when the WWE previously had their Cruiserweight division, they were integrated into the show without all these unnecessary bells and whistles. Going forward, the Cruiserweight segments on Raw would not be received well, and so WWE created their own brand specifically for the division, that being 205 Live. Viewership for this would also fall short of expectations, with the brand eventually being merged with NXT in 2019, before subsequently being removed altogether. The Cruiserweight Championship would get unified with the NXT North American Championship on January 4th, 2022, as part of NXT's New Year's Evil event. The reasons why the division failed on WWE TV are fairly obvious. The fact that labeling someone a cruiserweight limits their ability to be seen as a main eventer. A lot of the guys on the roster weren't given much in the way of storylines or character development, and the fact that the modern style of wrestling is more of a quote-unquote cruiserweight style, meaning that these guys were pretty much wrestling the same sort of matches that could be found up and down the card. Whilst the ball was dropped on the division itself, the Cruiserweight Classic tournament is still held in very high regard by fans who both watched it at the time and those who've paid it a revisit on WWE Network. It showed that the company was capable of thinking outside the box at the time, and it left many wondering why they didn't do similar experiments more often around that time period. There's some excellent matches to be found within the CWC, and it also lets die-hard WWE fans see other world-class talents that are currently competing in other organisations. Plenty of matches are available on YouTube, but do take the time to watch the whole tournament from start to end if you haven't done so already. Let me know your thoughts on the CWC in the comment section down below, and let me know what other concepts you'd like to see now that the WWE is much more open to working with outside companies in 2024. Thanks for watching everyone, I do appreciate it, and please take care.